Hi, my name is Cassidy Embry. This is for my educational autobiography for TCE 191. Um, I'm going to go through to explicitly avoid doing the life stages because as I was practicing this, I kind of saw myself falling into that a little bit. So I'm going to talk through this, and I'm also kind of use the prompts like we're supposed to get away from that, because I practicing, I saw myself keep going and back into that, and that's what we're supposed to do. So something that really is like the basis of everything that has impacted me in my schooling is I went to in Ohio a public school that's like the richest public school in Ohio, the biggest high school population in Ohio, and also the most wealthy. And that was a great experience looking back on it, and while I was in it, I knew how grateful I was for it. And this is just like background, so when I explain things, you're like, oh, that makes sense. The neighboring high schools would be like, oh, your little college campus for your high school. But I just wanted to throw that out there. Did you feel othered, or did you fit in the dominant norm? I feel like when it comes to my gender identity, I did feel othered in a lot of ways, especially when it came to learning about like science and math. It didn't come so easily to me as, reading and writing and history did. And I felt like I wasn't allowed to be good at it. Like, I was supposed to have a million questions. I was supposed to struggle in science because I was a girl. And that there was only supposed to be like just a few girls who were good at it, because it was like a guy thing. They would blow things up. They would go crazy on the Ruby Goldberg, which is like the big experiment. And I felt like I'm gonna adjust this, wasn't allowed to be good at science. And that really did help me back, because I didn't know, like I did know science. Like I had some aspects and some ideas and questions to ask that proved that I did know science and I was engaging. And I'm trying to think what subject it was. There was a certain moment. I remember the teacher's name. It was in the classroom. I remember I'm thinking about this exact class. And it was a lot of boys. And there was a few girls. And there was a few girls, like I literally know their name, who were good at science. And they're like accepted and known as like, oh yeah, she's this girl that's good at science. The rest no. So I feel like I wasn't allowed to step up naturally and just be good at a subject that I'm being taught in school, the goal is for me to understand it. And I feel like I wasn't allowed to understand it like they did, like the boys or the girls. There were the few picks of like the people who they accepted to be good at science. That's something that I felt like the other a lot was definitely that girl. And to go into that, not just my schooling, but also like, I don't know if this is allowed. I talked about it when I practiced. Okay, let's move on then. How are you? How did my social positioning affect my educational opportunities? How did my social positioning affect my educational opportunities? Going back to what I said before, it was a really wealthy, high-end high school, best in the state. And I didn't fit in that demographic. There was popular neighborhoods where it was like the big houses and stuff, and I was never by that. And I did feel othered, because I didn't feel like I had the same opportunities to do sports, because sports are pricey and the school put so much money in it, and there was so many opportunity in these sports to gain these titles and this like resume and this career, and they gloated about it, and it was like they would announce it on the school thing, and I felt like that wasn't for me. I wasn't the target audience to be accepted in that, whether it was middle school or high school or before schooling period. I felt like that wasn't who we were. I felt like I was stick to jumping on a trampoline and kicking a soccer ball in the backyard. I didn't feel accepted, like I was a welcome from other people, because I didn't have the high quality bright pink soccer ball, because that one's $50, that one's $60, the other one's $20. You know what I mean? And I just, children saw that too, and they picked up on it and they acted on it, whether they didn't know it too. So I definitely felt like I didn't feel like I had a lot of opportunities like other people did. That's one of them for sports and stuff in my school. Social class. I was a middle class. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my identity chart that I filled out. Yeah, I always, when I was a kid in my social economic status, I've always yearned to not be in the status that I was in and to be higher up so I could afford this, and that, and I could have the best pencils that didn't break every 5 seconds in classroom, so you didn't have to hear the squeak of me going, and no, my, truly, like, it's a real thing. Like, it's not something that's like, oh, like, it tore me apart inside, because I felt like I just wasn't, like, everyone around me could perceive me as someone who didn't have the best things, and how, in effect, in turn, that caused me to not be as worthy or be as smart or be able to understand the information that is the same information we're all receiving. And that affected me a lot because it affected my self-worth, and how, because I believe that education is also a self-discovery. It's a personal journey that you have to kind of choose for yourself. Either if you're forced in it or not, you have to choose for yourself if you want to learn or not. And I did, but I just, time again, like the stuff I just talked about, I felt like it wasn't for me, that I wasn't allowed to do that in this setting, that I needed a class that was dumbed down for me so I could understand it. But that, in reality, that's not true. I did benefit from those, and I do think, and later on when in college, at the end of my high school career, I took the higher classes. I kind of stepped out of that because I realized it. I was like, why? And I envy these people because of it. But I ended up catching on to it and kind of changing that a little bit, and I still do that, and it's very hard still. It doesn't stay in schooling. It follows me till now. Without getting too off track, let's move to a different one. I have more to say, but it's just not the right one. Okay. How your interests in schools and teaching have been formed. Did your educational experience cause you to want to explore did your educational experience want you to explore the possibility of teaching in some way? Fun fact, I am a double major and one of them is primary education. I worked in a bunch of schools, and I still do. Did my educational experience want me to explore teaching? Absolutely not. I remember it was my senior year of high school, so this was like 3-4 years ago, and I was with the principal, and I was being walked to the special needs classroom to volunteer to help them and just be an extra, like, peer in there, and I was going to do their nails for the dance. And she asked me, she was like, do you see yourself being a teacher? And I'm like, no. I mean, it was a dramatic, like, no. Nope, could never. I was like, I remember telling her, and I fully believe this, I was like, I could never spend my entire life in a school, in a brick building. Could never do it. Never be me. I never want to be a teacher. I said those words, and I fully believe that. And that was all from my previous teachers, who I didn't get the most fostered education, going back into me not feeling worthy. They also had a part in that. They did. It's not, I mean, I'm not talking about a single teacher. I mean, they all a part of it. And also, accepting and believing what the kids all collectively thought. It's not explicitly said between the kids, but it's an energy, it's a vibe, it's your action, it's your habits, it's the way you look at people, the way you treat them, even minor things. And the teachers, sometimes the kids learn it from the teachers, and that made me I didn't want to be that person. I didn't want to be, because to me, teachers are people who force you to do this, and that, and didn't help you even though they said they should. That was my idea of teachers, and I'm like, I don't want to be that. That sucks. And up until my first year of college, that changed. But throughout my entire educational experience beforehand, that was my belief, that I couldn't be those people who were just like mean to kids, because I felt like teachers were mean to me, that they discounted me, they didn't give me attention, they gave everyone else attention but me. And I was like, how could someone do that? Like, I'm thinking of, I'm trying to get a good example. There was one time, it was 5th grade, and I was in my English class, and we were talking about differences and like stereotypes and like perceptions and stuff. And she was like, she called like 4 different people's names out and followed it with like a compliment, like doesn't mean blank compliment. And she did mine as the 3rd name. She goes, it was something about just because Cassidy can't blank doesn't mean this. Why would that come out of your mouth in front of a classroom? Like, of course that had impact on me. But that was schooling, because it's not just me being told that. It's the entire environment of all of my schooling peers that also contribute to my learning experience. And the teacher that's supposed to be the leader in teaching and education said that. It's not just me, but everyone. Just because this doesn't mean this. And it was a backhanded compliment. I recognize that in that moment because I am not dumb, I am smart. And I recognize it in hindsight, and I recognize it now. Even with the cloudy perceptions of like, yeah, you were a kid, it's still predominant to me, and that really shaped me. And that made me not want to be a teacher, because it was like, why would I ever want to be in the position to have the power to say that to people? But now I realize it's a choice, and it's different for me to teacher, because I have some amazing teachers. But even then, those teachers still didn't make me want to teach. They made me feel grateful for them in my life, but they didn't make me want to be a teacher. Me wanting to be a teacher is a different story that doesn't completely align with this assignment. So I digress. How your interest in school and teaching have been formed? Oh wait, I just did that one. How did you come to arrive here at Miami? You all have a pleasure, but sophisticated on this journey, support your acceptance to Miami, be able to navigate the difficulties of attending. So my journey, the last question, how did you come to arrive at Miami? Yes, we're all privileged to be here. What specific moments or key elements of your journey supported you being accepted to Miami and being able to navigate the difficulties? That is a loaded question. Reflecting back on my school experience, I did not feel like I was worthy after all of those years feeling counted out and feeling like I wasn't smart enough to learn this, or that. That made me feel like I wasn't worthy or ready to go to a university. My senior year, because of that feeling, because of that experience, I did not look at schools. And I looked at them. If I did look at them, I was too overwhelmed and shut it down. I tried not to talk about it. It was too stressful for me. It was too scary. I'm not worthy. And it wasn't set up correctly. But how could that have been true if all my peers are all picking their own universities and they're going all over the place? They're going in-state, they're going out of state, whatever university it is, they're going to. So why can't I also feel like I can do that? And I didn't for a while. My first year I did not go to Miami. I went to community college, and then I ended up visiting Miami. And through that experience, I was like, this is where I need to be. And through other experiences of moving out of my mother's house and other stuff that's not schooling, changed me and enabled me to be like, this is what I'm going to do. Even if I think people don't perceive me as worthy enough to do this, I want to do this, and I will do this. That decision was definitely a counter belief to my schooling of what I felt about it and reflected on it. And I felt like, another part of me, I felt like I didn't get what I deserved of learning. And I value education. I love learning. It's power. It's one of the best currencies and things you could do to enrich your life and the quality of your life. And I didn't feel it was right for me not to be worthy of that. Despite all this and all these feelings, all these perceptions and all these assumptions I had and all these experiences I had, I was like, that's not right. Like, my life has been all of this up to this point. Not anymore. It's not. So that answers that. What specific most key elements journey? I just explained that. The difficulties. Navigate the difficulties. That's another 10-minute video. Navigate the difficulties. How'd you come to arrive here? What specific moments being able to navigate the difficulties. I have thought about this a lot, and it's hard to condense it into not a 30-minute video. I mean, honestly, to this day, it's still hard. I have to think, the number one thing that I always know is how lucky I am to go to Miami and how grateful I am to be here and how it is because of me. And I still have responsibility to uphold that and continue that. And it's hard. It's not easy, especially with those beliefs don't just go away. They still come back when you're still, I'm still in schooling. I'm still in education. I'm in college. And all those feelings still get triggered, and they come back when teachers and habits and words come back in the classroom. And, thankfully, this is important to understand context, because I bet I'm asking, well, what key moments, details has that happened at Miami where those feelings have been triggered back up? I have had to do a lot of online classes because another hiccup in my journey, my credits didn't transfer from Sinclair correctly, so I had to do a lot of classes. But since I was a transfer student, I had last pick, so a lot of my classes were online, and I wasn't doing face-to-face instruction with teachers, and that lacks the component of that face-to-face construction. Now this is online class, but it was like more than half my class. Only 2 classes were in person. I took 19 credits. The rest were all online. So it's definitely hard to still do it. 10 to 4 university, every day. It's I'm glad I'm here, and what I've experienced and to get here is insane, and it's so different from other people. I digress, not to get too into different topics. I'm going to go back to, I'm going to address the element of gender. I'm going to go ahead and refer to my identity chart. Gender I filled in as, I'm going to point to it. I filled in as one of my important ones, and in it I wrote women believed, women weren't as respected as boys are in school, and that was obviously very predominant. But what really affected me about my gender growing up and my experiences is definitely my own family and their beliefs on gender, and how that impacted me, and how when I brought that to school, it was challenged, but also agreed with sometimes, where I couldn't find a clear answer. My mind is trying to find yes, no, the black and white answers, right? It's trying to find it. It's trying to find one, agree with one, stick to it, believe it to make me feel better, to ease my conscience. And it was like a tug of war. And I was confused, and I was mad, and I was like, I shouldn't be mad. It was a whole journey that still goes on to this day. And gender, it is true. I was reading one of the articles. I can see which one it is. Not Wheatley. It might be Hooks. No, one of the articles stated that, boys were like strong in gym and girls weren't. And I literally annotated it. It was written by a man. Oh, the other. Gendering. This was in Brown's article, the Examining the Other, in the section of Examining the Other in gender othering in a social context. I highlighted it. It says, These scholars commonly suggest that school curriculum in the United States reproduces sex role stereotypes and produces the conditions for females to opt out of particular subjects in school-wide activities. Example, sports, math, science, technology. I already touched on how this impacted me in science and math, but I will go on how this impacted me in gym class. There are so many moments in gym class that I could pull out and just give you a scene rundown of what happened, but that'd take up too much time. One of the things I remember happening is we would all have our own spots for warm-ups, and every single day from the first day ever in that class, this teacher doesn't know our names, doesn't know anything about us besides what we look like and what our gender is based on what we look like. And every day when we do warm-ups, he was like, girls, if you can't do a push-up, bend your knees, do it on your knees. How does that make me stronger if I'm not going to endure and try the traditional push-up from a plank? It immediately bumps boys and girls down a level when your instructor that's supposed to be your leader is now automatically saying out loud, girls, if you can't meet up to the boys' level, don't even try, because you can't get there. Just bend your knees. That affected all the girls. I remember we would talk about it. And even, and it made me so happy, some of the boys would recognize this and say this to us, how he was sexist and how he was mean to the girls. That was a great experience, and that made me feel so lucky, because I know a lot of people in schooling do not receive that from other guys or males at all. And that affected me because I felt like, again, it reiterated how I felt about sports, how they weren't meant for me, how I had to naturally be built, naturally be muscular. Guess what? That's not how that works. But it's, again, what he was teaching us, that gym teacher. Don't even try. What? Anyways. And it really taught me that, like, what that taught me, and I wish it wasn't taught this, is that, you know, sometimes you can't do something and you shouldn't even try. That is not a lesson, that is not a belief that is beneficial to anyone at the end of the day. Pause. When we go into the history of education by Gray, from Psychology Today, we kind of see the willingfulness that he says, let me say the quote. Willingfulness, which had been a virtue, became a vice that had to be beaten out of children. Again, he's talking about the 1800s, but, you know, and when I went to school in the 2010s and the late 2000s, it wasn't physically beaten out of us, but it was definitely degraded out of us. And the tone of voice and the words they used and the attitude and the treatment. These people got more attention because they were following what the teacher wanted to do. And it was confusing, because it also wasn't confusing, because it was almost so evident of what this one person wanted us to do. But then that was the obvious and clear part that I got. And then it would confuse me. It's like, but I don't want to do that. I don't have to do that. I remember we had field day. Here's another example. Yay. Field day in kindergarten. And we were all outside and we were doing like these big obstacles. They were like crazy survivor challenges where you had to like run with like your foot tied to someone, or you had to go on this playground, you had to run and find this color flag and come back. Or you had to run across the field and run down, or play this big game, pick up this big field in your teeny tiny kindergarten, and you have to go with all your other mates, and you're gonna throw a ball, people are gonna laugh at you. And some of them, I just didn't want to do them. And I didn't feel like that was a bad thing. I was participating and I was watching, but I just didn't want to do all of them because, again, maybe this is back to sports, but it's also just because, like, it's not reading. I don't want to do that. And I was constantly shamed and ignored and had my eyes rolled at by adults, teachers, and parents and chaperones who were supposed to be helping me, supposed to be supporting me, were not there for me. This is becoming very long. I move on to the examination of your social economic class background and experiences. I am actually not going to do that. Yeah, I will. I'm going to touch on that and ethnic and race. In my school, very white, very wealthy, there was such a big phenomenon going on that it didn't have to be said, but it was so clear that every student, a lot of students, saw this. There was a group of delinquents that got in trouble, did this bad thing and this bad thing, and that's so bad. Oh my God, they're bad. Don't hang out with them. And I've noticed throughout my schooling, as I was so curious, I was like, why can't we be friends too? Like, I think that person's funny sometimes. They made a joke and they made me laugh. It was so funny. Like, I want to laugh again like that. That's a real thing that happened, by the way. I wasn't making up. It's a real thing that happened. And I started questioning. I was like, I wonder why. And I started analyze people in my mind. I'm very visual of, people and their figures in my mind I was putting in. I was like, what in this group is common and what in this group is the same? And it made me realize that the group of delinquents that were, perceived as bad and had rough lives and were judged and talked bad about were the people with low economic status, as well as people who were not white. I had low economic status, but I was white and I didn't fit into that group. Sometimes I thought people did because I did have low economic status until I realized it's also a race thing. And that affected me a lot because I was like, I think they're just like me. I thought it in my head. I was like, I think they're just like me. And it freaked me out because first I was like, oh my God, they perceive me as bad in this because they perceive them as bad at this. But it's like, I learned slowly, it was like, actually, because I'm white, I don't get those perceptions and assumptions said about me, but they do. And that didn't make any sense to me. When we were on the bus, everyone would see the bus stops and they would see like the areas they lived in, and people would almost always know who the people who lived in a rundown neighborhood were. And I thought that was weird. Because what does it matter? You go to the same school, you're getting on the same bus, but you share a bus, but it was just they were viewed on as like, oh, that's sad. Or like, if they weren't here one day, real thing that happened and was talked about on the bus, if people in the rundown neighborhood weren't picked up that day because we went to the bus stop and they just weren't there, oh, something bad happened. They got in trouble. They got banned from school. They got in trouble. They did drugs. And it was like, oh my God. Where if it was a white kid that wasn't there today, like, oh, I think they went to Disney World. And it was like, that was such a common thing from kindergarten to high school. It was like, oh, they're probably just in Florida, it's spring break. So they're still, they're in Florida still, where it was the low economic status kid, the child. It was like, ooh, I bet they got in trouble. And it's like, those come from such a negative connotation of behavior and stuff that wasn't true. And then so they would come back and be like, where were you? Were like, oh, I was visiting family. And it was true. Like, they were just seeing their grandma and grandpa. And that's something that confused me a lot, because it was like, how would you know? You cannot know any of these things because these are all assumptions, because you only had where they lived. I lived in a middle class type area. We moved a lot. And sometimes I would be gone and I'm like, I would miss school because I was in Florida visiting my grandpa, or I was in Pennsylvania visiting my other family lives in Pennsylvania. And I would remember thinking, no one's gonna know. I get to tell everyone I get to school that I actually was in a different state. Like, I was traveling. And I felt so wealthy and so rich. And I was like, no one was gonna know that I was traveling, and they're losers. We're in the classroom. And I was like, who are these losers in the classroom? This is a real thing that happened that I actually thought. I'm like, oh, in my mind, I built that the losers in the classroom were the low economic status students, and the people that I was now like were the white kids that were usually gone for extra days because they're in Florida or something. And that's what I felt like. And I felt good and I liked it. And I was like, finally, I'm not like this group that I think they perceive me to be. And that has changed now. And it's so complicated and it's so interesting how that all came together and how it was so consistent, grade after grade after grade. But even with different people and different teachers, it still was so consistent. Personal identities. So I don't really have a direct model for this. I didn't feel like it was appropriate because I couldn't, when I tried to do it, I sit down and do it, I could only do like a model that was like, then this, then this, then this, of year after year after year, but that's not how it was. So the best thing I could do was explain it like this visually and see my actual reaction and think about it and see me actually recalling and formulating the memory that I have stored in my mind. I think was a bit more powerful than it was it on paper or on board a game of life, which I bet turned out great for other people, but it just didn't work out for me. I struggled with trying to get it out of kindergarten, first, second, third grade. So that's why I choose this format. I hope it was informative, and it was informative for me. I have more thoughts about it that I will think about all day today. I think I answered everything. Let me go through some of the articles to see if I connect anything back. I know I did Gray. Collins, I wanted to touch on. What does the flag mean to you? I did find a lot of things in this that I thought were relatable, that I have seen in real time, in real life. I actually had an experience where I felt kind of similar to her, not because I got chosen to read, to go speech and what the flag meant to me, but I was in my English class and it was junior year. I remember this, it was junior year, 4 or 5 years ago. And we were writing our college essays, actually, because we were privileged enough to have write our college essays in English class. We were privileged for that. I knew that, and we were all great for it. I mean, not all of us, but I was. And I wrote, and this college essay is you pick a prompt and I write about my life. Not my neighbor's life, not my teacher's life, mine. Again, just like Colin, she's writing about her experience, not her white friend, not her teacher, hers. And when she brought it to her teacher, she was like, I literally highlighted it. What did her teacher say to her? My teacher had completely changed the meaning of my entire speech. Her teacher took a red pen and circled the stuff and exited stuff out of editing her speech of what she should get rid of, what she should add. And then she said, when she was done, she said, I made a few minor changes. Please look them over. And once you make them, your speech will be fine. Once you make these changes that this single teacher has made, then you'll be fine. Then you'll be fine. Your speech is not fine now, but after my edits, then you'll be fine. That is not creative expression. That is not, what's the word? It's not her true work. I know it's just a plagiarism, but it's not her true work. That's not her ideas and thoughts like you asked her to do. And something similar to me happened to me in junior year as I wrote this college essay that's about my life. And I brought it up because we had all our essays had to be checked by the teacher. And she pulled me aside from all the kids in the classroom while class was going on, had me set my computer down, sit right next to her, and say, we need to fix a few things. Fix what, girl? This is about my life. And I was like, okay, maybe we're talking about grammar. She didn't fix a single grammar mistake. I thought we were going to sit down and fix grammar. I'm like, that's valid. You need to fix grammar because grammar needs to be right so you can understand your point. Wasn't grammar. We had to delete this. We had to delete what I thought about this. We had to delete this experience because this doesn't make any sense because I didn't say it right, or that doesn't matter to people. And at the end of it, when I was done, my experiences and these moments that I have written down were gone. And I was like, This isn't an essay about me anymore. This is an essay about what this white man wants to hear. And what was so frustrating about this was not only the teacher who I respected and wanted to learn from, but the day after or the week after, we had an entire lesson that was pre-planned about how we shouldn't write catered to the white man who's going to read our essays and decide if we're going to get in or not. She did this after we had that session, and I felt cheated. I felt mad. I was confused. I thought she was being selfish. I thought she was, and this is when my schooling kind of changed. I thought she was jealous. I was like, I can write this well, and I'm a junior. Mind you, my other majors could have writing, I know. I was like, I can write this well, and you deleted it because it was good. And now did not trust her opinion. I did not trust what she deleted. Then after she gave that speech, I undid what she deleted. Thank you, technology. I undid what she deleted, and I chose to kept what I thought I wanted. And I did delete some of it because, there's a word count, and I wanted to make sure, practical, like you have your draft and you have your final draft. And I decided to throw her advice away and said, F you, girl, because that's not a teacher. It's not. That's why I didn't want to be a teacher. And I just thought that I truly felt. And I actually never ended up using that essay because I went to Sinclair, not Miami. But I ended up writing my own essay. This also relates to my journey to Miami because I do have to write an essay to get for the application. I wrote my own essay about like 40 minutes. I don't want to say 40 minutes because I'm like embarrassed that it wasn't enough, but I'm good. Which is so different from what I was taught in schooling. See how I changed? Yeah, and I only changed that way because I recognized what I was taught in schooling. I wrote the essay completely on my experience alone, and I had no one read it. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to read this. I'm going to edit it. I'm going to change the perspectives. I'm going to see if this applies to the prompt. And I'm going to be happy with it because I made this. I'm proud of myself. And I got in. I need no teacher telling me to delete my personal experiences. Because my personal experiences and my thoughts and my feelings and my ideas is what got me here. Not what you thought was important or not. Anyways, I feel like I did a good job answering all those questions about education and schooling. Again, I explained to you why I did the video. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.